Rawteur. In 1982, a movie so similar to Jaws hit theaters, and Universal Pictures went to court to have it banned. The studio claimed it wasn't just another shark movie, it was outright theft. But here's the thing, the movie Great White made $18 million before Universal could stop it. Therefore, was it really a shameless ripoff? Using the official case as a guide, I'll show you all 8 alleged infringing claims, side by side, so that you can decide for yourself. You'll see exact copies of similar scenes, similar characters, even the same grand finale. We'll start with what I think is Universal's weakest claim, and work our way to the most blatant. Subsection 15E of the filing alleges that both movies use a fake shark sighting to mislead the characters and audience. The false alarm in Jaws occurs on the beach while Chief Brody anxiously watches the water. What he initially believes to be a shark fin turns out to be a black swim cap. The way the cap catches the light and moves through the waves creates a convincing illusion of a dorsal fin. This moment heightens both his and the audience's tension. But in Great White, a similar moment happens after the shark attacks a windsurfer in the opening scene. As the victim's loved ones gather on the pier awaiting news, a woman spots what appears to be a fin cruising beneath the structure.
That would be the other half of Mike's surfboard.
However, it's soon revealed to be the broken, flipped over tail end of the windsurfer's board, creating a moment of mistaken panic. Now here's the thing. False alarms are common in nearly every genre. They're called red herrings. And in a shark movie, a mistaken dorsal fin is one of the most predictable misdirections. But when you combine this claim with the others, it becomes clearer what kind of case Universal was trying to build. Subsection 1A alleges that you didn't hit the like button yet. Subsection 15A alleges that both movies have an opening scene with an isolated shark attack in an almost identical sequence. In Jaws, a group of young people gather around a bonfire at the beach. 2 of them break away from the group, deciding to go for a late night swim. The woman enters the water first, while the man, too intoxicated, struggles to keep up. As she swims alone, the shark's presence is revealed through underwater POV shots, creating a sense of unseen danger. The repetitive bass tones in the score steadily build suspense. When the shark finally strikes, the attack is prolonged and brutal. The woman is violently thrashed around, screaming in agony, before she is ultimately dragged underwater. This leaves no doubt about her gruesome fate. In Great White, the attack unfolds differently, but follows a similar structure. A young man is windsurfing in the distance, while his friends prepare their own windsurfing equipment on the shore. The tension begins to build for the audience when a piece of his board is bitten off. Accompanied by the same underwater POV shots and a rising music cue. This signals the shark's unseen presence. Although the scenes are not exact copies, they follow the same suspense-building techniques, using underwater POV shots, an escalating music cue, and an isolated victim whose fate is sealed before anyone can intervene. However, the next subsection alleges that Great White didn't just mimic the structure, it directly lifted entire sequences from Jaws. Subsection 15C and 15G alleges that both films have nearly identical shark attack sequences involving boats and falling victims. In Jaws, the copied sequence occurs just after 2 boys pull a prank with a fake shark fin. It sends the beach into a panic. With everyone's attention focused on the false alarm, the real shark sets its sights on a man and 3 boys in a dinghy. One of the boys, happens to be Chief Brody's son, adding personal stakes to the attack. The tension escalates as the man is ultimately killed by the shark in one of the film's most memorable shots, the infamous severed leg as it sinks to the ocean floor. Brody's son is left in shock but survives, as do the other two boys. At first, I couldn't find the exact equivalent of this scene in the other movie, but then I realized what the producers of Great White had done to cover their tracks. They split the sequence into two separate events at different points in the movie. The first part takes place when Gloria asks her father Peter to help her find the missing windsurfer from the opening scene. They enlist the help of Ron, the film's shark hunter, and while the three are out searching, the shark bumps the boat, causing Gloria to fall into the water. And just like in Jaws, this scene uses POV shots from the shark's perspective, creating the same sense of imminent danger. Fortunately, Gloria's pulled back into the boat just in time, much like Brody's son in Jaws. The second half of the copied sequence happens later, during the regatta scene. Here, the film recreates the elements of Jaws' dinghy attack. A panic on the beach distracts everyone, including a man alone in a small boat. Taking advantage of the chaos, the shark capsizes the dinghy and kills the man, echoing the earlier Jaws attack where the nameless man is killed while the kids survive. You see, once you know what to look for, it's blatant. In both films, the main character's child falls into the water but is saved, while an unnamed man in a dinghy is killed. The structural similarities are undeniable, and with 4 more claims to go, Great White's case is already looking very bad. Subsection 15B and 15D allege that the discovery of the shark follows the same order of events from a missing person to an unsettling find. In Jaws, the sequence begins when Chief Brody's son comes home, joking about being bitten by a vampire. The phone rings, but the audience isn't immediately told what the call is about. Brody then leaves to meet the person who made the report, and as they walk along the beach, it becomes clear that it's about the missing swimmer from the opening scene.
Come on. Oh, Jesus.
Moments later, they discover her remains, covered in crabs, marking the first gruesome confirmation of a shark attack. The next scene shows Brody back at the office writing a report. The medical examiner calls, officially confirming that the cause of death was a shark attack. Despite this, the town's officials are reluctant to take action. A few scenes later, Brody and a scientist set out at night to find the shark. Instead of encountering the predator, they come across an abandoned, partially sinking boat. The scientist decides to dive underwater to inspect the hull, and discovers a gaping hole and a massive shark tooth lodged inside it. The tension builds further with a jump scare reveal of the fisherman's body. Both Brody and the scientist take their finding to Mayor Vaughn, urging him to cancel the regatta, but he refuses to acknowledge the danger. In Great White, the sequence plays out in a nearly identical fashion, just with slightly different details. Peter's daughter bursts into his office, asking for help finding her missing friend, the windsurfer from the opening scene. They immediately go out searching, retracing his last known location. Meanwhile, Ron has just found a broken surfboard with a clear bite mark. Peter examines it and determines that a shark was responsible. A few scenes later, Peter arrives at the pier just as the Coast Guard tows in an abandoned fishing boat. While examining the wreckage, Ron finds a severed arm inside the hull. However, unlike in Jaws, where Brody and Hooper have to fight to convince the mayor of the threat, the governor is already present at the discovery of the arm. But despite seeing the severed limb himself, he refuses to cancel the regatta. This directly mirrors Mayor Vaughn's decision to ignore the warnings in Jaws. While some details have been shifted, the story structure is identical. A missing person leads to a disturbing discovery, the authorities refuse to act, and then the audience is left knowing that a disaster is inevitable. You can clearly see that Great White was lifting its beats directly from Jaws. Subsection 13A, 14C, and 15F alleges that both movies feature politicians who refuse to act, instead downplayed the shark threat in order to protect local tourism and political interests. In Jaws, Mayor Vaughn's primary concern is the economic impact of canceling the 4th of July weekend events. He repeatedly dismisses Chief Brody's warnings, prioritizing the town's financial gain over public safety. However, his stance changes after Brody's son is knocked into the water and goes into shock following the shark attack. This incident shakes him.
I'm gonna hire Quint to kill the shark. What? What are you talking about? Martin. My kids were on that beach too. Sign it, Larry.
Leading to a moment of contrition at the hospital, where he apologizes to Brody and finally signs off on hiring Quint to hunt the shark. Great White plays out practically the same, only shifting the politician's motivation from economic to political. Governor Wells isn't concerned about financial loss. Instead, he fears that canceling the regatta will damage his political campaign. But just like Vaughn, his priority is not the safety of the people. His turning point comes when his own son, along with Peter's daughter Gloria and 2 other friends, take it upon themselves to hunt the shark. During their attempt, Gloria is injured. This directly mirrors Jaws, where Brody's son is attacked and hospitalized.
Peter, I'm sorry.
It's not your fault. If it hadn't been for your helicopter, we'd have lost her for sure.
It is my fault.
Oh, you had no way of knowing they were going to take your boat.
Yeah, but I should have known.
At the hospital in Great White, Governor Wells apologizes to Peter and, as an act of contrition, personally leads the effort to hunt the shark himself, just as Mayor Vaughn finally agrees to hire Quint. The character arc is identical. A selfish politician prioritizes an upcoming regatta over the safety of his beach town, but after a child is attacked, his focus shifts to eliminating the shark. It's undeniable. The same political character, the same priorities, and even the same event type. But it doesn't stop with the politician. Great White also copies other key character archetypes from Jaws. Subsection 13B, 14B, and 14D allege that the main hunting team structure is nearly identical with the same character archetypes. In Jaws, Brody, Hooper, and Quint form the shark hunting team. In Great White, Hammer and Benton function as near doppelgangers, filling the same roles. Chief Brody in Jaws is Peter Benton in Great White, the reluctant hero and family man who becomes the de facto leader in the fight against the shark. Matt Hooper in Jaws is also Peter Benton in Great White, the knowledgeable expert bringing experience in marine survival and shark behavior. Quint in Jaws is Ron Hammer in Great White. the English accented, grizzled shark hunter with a tough, no-nonsense attitude, similar to how Great White divided Jaws' dinghy attack sequence into two separate scenes. They've also combined two character archetypes into one. The structural intent is clear, but the most blatant claim of copyright infringement comes in the execution of the climax, where Great White doesn't just imitate Jaws, it mirrors its finale almost beat for beat. Subsection 13C and 15J alleges that the climax of both films is structurally identical. In Jaws, the final battle begins as Brody, Hooper, and Quint chase the shark into open water aboard the Orca. Despite multiple failed attempts to subdue the creature, it rams the boat, causing it to take on water. As the Orca begins to break apart, Quint loses his footing, sliding down the tilted deck and directly into the shark's jaws. He struggles violently, screaming as the shark crushes his torso and drags him underwater, leaving Brody as the last survivor. With the Orca sinking rapidly, Brody climbs onto the mast, spotting a compressed air tank lodged in the shark's mouth. In a desperate last stand, he grabs a rifle and fires multiple shots, missing at first before finally hitting the tank. The bullet pierces through, triggering a massive explosion that blows the shark into pieces. As Brody watches the remains of the shark sink, Hooper resurfaces, having survived the earlier cage attack. Together, the two survivors grab onto floating debris and paddle back to shore. Great White follows the same beats. Hammer and Benton come across floating debris, a sign that the shark is nearby. Hammer dives into the water, armed with dynamite, in an attempt to destroy the creature. However, he becomes tangled in some wire and is dragged off by the shark. A few scenes later, he resurfaces. But before he can be fully saved, the shark lunges, grabbing Hammer by the legs and devouring him. With Hammer, the expert, now dead, Benton manages to retrieve the detonator from the dynamite belt. After a brief moment of hesitation, he activates the charge, causing the shark to explode. The structure is nearly identical. The shark kills the expert first, leaving the protagonist to take the last desperate shot. The shark then explodes. At this point, it's impossible to ignore the blatant recreation of Jaws' final battle. Great White doesn't just take inspiration from Jaws. It recycles its entire climax down to the order of events. After Universal successfully had the movie pulled from US theaters, it had unintended consequences. The film became even more popular overseas. In Japan, it was released on video as Jaws Returns. The international poster went even further, with some versions retitling the movie as The Last Jaws. Furthermore, the poster for Great White directly mimics Jaws 2 poster. Both feature a shark breaching the water, lunging at a water sport athlete. In another, the female victim's pose and swimsuit color are nearly identical, reinforcing the visual similarity. The composition and perspective also closely resemble Jaws 2, making it feel like a deliberate attempt to position Great White as part of the Jaws franchise. Interestingly, Great White's director, Enzo G. Castiglieri, essentially admitted that he was riding on the success of Jaws. His producer, Ugo Tucci, sought to create a shark movie that followed the Jaws formula, but with an Italian twist. However, severe technical challenges plagued production, much like Spielberg's difficulties with the mechanical shark in Jaws.
Well, we had a number of different shark components. We had the full shark which I call the great white turd, because the shark was frustrating. It didn't really work all the time. It didn't work hardly at all.
Great White suffered from an even worse setback. The animatronic shark malfunctioned halfway through production, forcing Castiglieri to rely solely on the animatronic's head for the rest of the shoot. This led to a drastic reduction in the shark's screen time, a trick Spielberg also used in Jaws. Though, Great White lacked the same cinematic finesse. The underwater sequences relied heavily on archival footage of real sharks, yet the visual quality and cinematography don't exactly match the rest of Great White, creating a disjointed look. Beyond the use of stock footage, the shark's size is widely inconsistent throughout the film. During the regatta attack sequence, the creature appears massive when flipping a small boat, but later it seems significantly smaller. The inconsistency continues in the dinghy scene, where the shark is barely larger than the boat in one moment, yet in another shot, it looms as long as the entire dock. The most obvious size discrepancy happens during the final explosion. The animatronic head used in the climax is clearly a different scale from its earlier appearances, making it apparent that the film struggled to maintain a constant sense of the creature's proportions. Great White will forever be cemented in the Rip-Off Hall of Shame, just like this movie right here.